There are two things that I'm fond of telling my patients. One, that we think we're in charge of our brain, but it's really our brain that's in charge of us. And the other is that our reality is about 9/10 perception and about 1/10 fact. And I think this is really important, especially when you're doing therapy or working on your own mental health, because it reminds us that we are not as objective, especially about our own thought process, as we would like to think we are. My name is Dr. Vint Blackburn. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and I do a series of videos talking about mental health, especially those with personality disorder. Now, what do I mean by the idea that, first of all, we're not in charge of our brain's in charge of us? We all think that what we think is in our control, what we feel, what we see, how we perceive things. And yet there's a lot more going on in the brain than we have any idea. Our consciousness is really only a small portion of what's going on in our brain. And think about it. We don't have to remind ourselves to breathe. We don't have to remind ourselves to blink. All of those things are very automatic. And you know, our brain is doing a ton of things kind of in parallel with our consciousness. For instance, it's monitoring all the sounds around me, even if I'm not aware of them. It's listening for dangers. I'm constantly paying attention to my body, even though I don't feel the sensations of myself sitting here on this stone, because I'm not paying attention to it, unless I do. But you know, if a red ant were to crawl onto my skin and bite me, I'd be very aware of it. So our brain is constantly monitoring, but we're only paying attention to a small part of it. So many of the things we think and feel, they're almost automatic. They are just background noises that all of a sudden come up to a point where we pay attention to them and can actually know that they exist. So I think it's important for us to remember that we are a lot more than just the simple thoughts we're having, and our brain is telling us to do all kinds of things that we don't realize it's telling us to do. One of the important things about questioning thoughts and questioning our feelings is realizing that our brain may produce these things. We can recognize them. We can't necessarily stop them from being produced, but we can decide how we're going to react to them. So this is what I'm saying when I say that we're not really in charge of our brain. Our brain is in charge of us. And you know, in psychiatry, it's especially true because most of my really serious patients, something has gone wrong in the brain that has made it basically so that their world is different, so that the way that their brain works is not exactly the same as everybody else's. And this relates to the idea that our reality is 9/10 perception and 1/10 fact. And what I mean by that is, at any one time, we may be seeing or feeling or thinking something, but then when we look more closely, we realize, oh, we were mistaken. We saw that wrong, or we heard it wrong. I mean, how many times do you hear what you think you hear only to be corrected or shown? And it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I completely misheard that. I completely misunderstood what was being said. Well, all of that is perception. We are simply filtering all of these things that we see around us, that we think are objective, through a brain that is constantly looking at things and constantly weighing things and constantly adjusting things depending on our mood, depending on our physical state. If you're in physical pain or you're in a bad mood, mental pain, the world doesn't look the same. I alluded a little bit to that in my last video, but the world looks different. People look different. The whole way that things sound and feel seems different. I know that when I'm not in a good mood, my irritability skyrockets. And it's not that the world's different, it's that I'm different. And things that would normally bother me at all, bother me a lot. It actually is pretty empowering when you recognize that a lot of things do happen on their own, including feelings, and that we don't have to take responsibility for the feelings, but rather the reaction that we have to those feelings or the actions that we take on those feelings. Our brain is going to do what our brain is going to do, and a lot of times that's not what we want it to do. It may be to be really angry when we don't want to be angry, or it may be to be sad or scared when we don't want to be either of those things. And yet, that's just the brain doing its thing. Our consciousness is that point when we can actually analyze it a little bit and say, I wonder why I'm feeling that way. I wonder why that feeling is popping up right now. Once again, our brain is in charge of us, but we can still pay attention to what it's doing and what it's saying. And we can take charge of our reactions. I'm Dr. Vint Blackburn, and I hope you're enjoying these videos. I certainly enjoy making them. I'd like to start making more again, now that I'm actually starting to decide what my own priorities are in life. And if you like them, I really would appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. Also, if you have any comments, please put them in. I look them over, and I can certainly try to respond. I don't do psychiatry over YouTube, but I'm certainly happy to answer general questions or respond to any of your comments to what I've said in these videos.